Hi, this is Adam with the Adam Guitar Academy. In this video, we're going to be talking about the first part of the solo for Ride the Lightning. We are specifically going to be covering the solo as it plays over the riff that we did in the last video, the riff that went like this. If you recall, that was an E5 going to an E5, F sharp 5, those were palm muted. And then went to the C5, and then we did the E5 again, and the F sharp 5 again. Both of those were palm muted, and then we did the G5 sliding into the A5. If that's confusing, go back to the previous video and we really break that down. But anyway, that is what we're dealing with here with the solo. And we kind of harmonized, and we kind of analyzed it before, and we talked about how it's basically E minor, possibly E Dorian, though I didn't really think it was E Dorian. The reason was because of the C sharp from the F sharp 5, but it's so quick that I very much doubt that that is what they were thinking. And actually, I've forgotten, after I recorded the last video, I noticed there is a little bit of a tritone happening again from the F sharp going to the C. So when it goes at F sharp to C, has a nice heavy tritone sound, so I forgot to mention that. But overall, I think they're just kind of thinking E minor here, even though we have that C sharp happening, because that F sharp 5 is so quick. But anyway, you'll see what I mean as we're getting into the guitar solo. So you'll notice in the short here, and I'll let that play so you can get the solo in your ear. So you'll notice in the short, I used a fret wrap. These are very inexpensive, and I use these when I'm recording, not so much live, but when you're recording, they're great because when you're doing lead guitar and solos and stuff, you can get extra string noise, and this helps get rid of it to make your recording process go much easier. But you just put it on the guitar. I like to put it far away so my hand doesn't bump into it. In this case, I found the second fret worked pretty good. So they go on like that. But for our purposes today, I'm going to do it without it, so you can just learn how to play along and learn how to get good at muting the strings for a live situation. But be aware that fret wraps are available, and you can certainly use them if you're recording, and they are a great help. Okay, so the first part of the solo is quite a bit of fun. It is difficult, but not. It's you'll see what I mean. So it's a tapping section. I like, for tapping, I think it sounds better, just my opinion. I like to be on the bridge pickup. That's where the pickup switch is all the way down. On most guitars, it's where this pickup is getting used, the bottom one. Just my personal preference, I think it sounds better for tapping. And in fact, in the solo, there are certain parts I think sound better on the neck pickup, which you'll see, and we'll talk about. But getting into this, what we do is your pick is not going to get used, but we need it though, like right away, like after this. So we're not going to put the pick down. So we're going to still hold the pick like normal, and we're going to be tapping with our right middle finger. So to get my hand ready, I have my middle finger on this 12th fret of the G string, just ready to go. And then my index finger is ready on the 5th fret of the G string, and my pinky is ready for the 9th fret. So your hand's kind of in this section, in this position as it's going along. And we're going to go real slow to get this, especially if you've never tapped before. A big thing about tapping, though, especially without the fret wrap and even with it, we have to get good at muting the other strings. So what we're going to do is it's almost like palm muting a little bit, where our palm is going to cover the lower strings. And it's a little different from palm muting, because palm muting is usually that angle, but we're actually going to go for this angle. So it's even more of this section of your hand. So we're going to have that ready, especially on the lower strings. And my index and pinky, if you notice, are kind of angled where they're muting the top string. So you can hear my strings are getting muted pretty good. And so that's what's happening as far as muting is concerned. It's very important for tapping. If you don't, it sounds like a mess. So trust me. So anyway, really slow, just to kind of get this going. It's going to start with the tapping on 12. So the first thing that happens is you put a fair amount of force from your finger onto the 12th fret, almost like you're hammering on, but it's with the other hand, which is a tap, obviously. So you can just practice doing that. Just get good at that, getting that 12th fret to come out. And this is a G note, by the way, a G note on the G string. Now, once you have that, it's actually kind of like a pull-off, but it's with your tapping finger. So your index fingers are going to be on the 5th fret of the G string, which is a C note, and you're going to bring your middle finger kind of towards your face a little bit. So it's going to sound like this. We're going to tap and then pull the finger towards our face like this. So you can see my middle finger is coming towards me a bit. I don't like it going that way. I mean, I guess you could, but it's just my preference. I find it easier to do it this way. So anyway, we have a G going to a C right there. So it's like a hammer and pull off. It's just you're getting your other hand involved. So tapping is similar to hammer and pull offs, but using your right hand. Okay, so once that's done, you're going to then actually hammer on your pinky onto the 9th fret of the G string. Like that. So if you want to just practice that, the 5 to 9 hammer on like that. So but that being said, that index finger's you're not hammering your index finger down, it's just sitting there. So you're really just hammering that pinky. So if we put it all together, tap down, pull off, hammer on like that. So tap down right hand middle finger, pull off right hand middle finger while that index finger is on the 5th fret. Hammer on pinky to 9th fret. Just like that. And that's the tapping part. So it's not super difficult. It's just very fast, and that's what makes it difficult. So before worrying about the rhythm or anything, just get good at this and making sure there's no extra string noise. So just take your time. Take a week on this, 2 weeks if you have to, just doing this. See, I got some string noise there. And it just gets faster and faster. Now, music theory-wise, this is a C arpeggio. It's a G, a C, and E, or you could also just think C, E, G. C, E, and G is basically a C chord or a C triad. There's nothing too strange about that. The C triad is an E minor. And in the rhythm of the song that's going on where James Hetfield is playing, that C5 chord does get emphasized. So it makes sense that that Kirk Hammett is tapping a C arpeggio on this riff. It makes perfect sense. And so, and then it's eventually going to resolve on an A that you'll see in a bit, but we'll get to that. So rhythmically speaking, these are triplets, but 16th note triplets. So typically an 8th note triplet would sound, at a relative tempo would sound like this, triplet, like that, triplet, triplet, but it's twice that speed. So that's why it's difficult. But get used to the triplet. Do 8th note triplets, quarter note triplets, whatever you need to do to make it nice and simple for you until you get it. Triplet. Once that's feeling good, then you can get it up to tempo. At that super high speed, it gets tricky because it's super easy to not let the 5 come out. It can almost sound like this if you're not careful. That sounds really cool, but I'm not actually letting the 5 make any sound, the C. I'm really just hearing a G and E if I do that. So that's the hard part, is when you're doing this, it's super easy to mute out that 5th fret if you're not careful at that higher tempo. So you want to practice, and we want to make sure you can hear all 3 notes at the higher tempo. It takes quite a bit of practice, but it is fun and worth taking the time to do it. So there are 3 measures where it is just tap like that at 16th note triplets. So rhythmically speaking, it is basically having 8 triplets per measure, because if it were 8th notes, you'd have 4 triplets, but because it is 16th notes, you're going to get 8. So one full measure, triplet, triplet, beat 1, triplet, triplet, beat 2, triplet, triplet, beat 3, triplet, triplet, beat 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So a little tricky, but practice it slow and you'll get it. So even slower. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's one full measure. And you play that 3 times like that. The 4th time is going to have 6 triplets because it's going to then resolve on the A note that we alluded to before. So getting to measure 4, it is going to go triplet, 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 triplet. Now right here we would do that again, but this time we are going to resolve on an A note, which is the 14th fret on the G string. So this time after you go triplet, 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 you're going to then take that middle finger on the right hand and hammer it hard onto the 14th fret. And then you're going to vibrato it with your right hand. And that's a little weird because we're so used to doing vibrato with the left hand. So that takes a little bit of practice as well. So once again, triplet, 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 like that. And then the vibrato technique, it is just like left hand vibrato, but with the right hand. But it's different because your hand's at a different angle. You know, we're not doing this angle, right? Like our left hand is doing. So it's like this. So it feels a little strange at first. But if we were to count this out, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that 14th fret or the A lasts for 2 beats, beats 3 and 4. Music theory wise, if you recall in the riff, at the end of the riff, it slides from a G5 to an A5. And that A does kind of hit as that A5 is coming, so it makes perfect sense. So Kirk Hammett's emphasizing the A with the A5 chord at the end there. So it makes total music theory sense, and it's just a clean E minor so far. What I mean by it is a key of E minor. It's a C, triad resolving on an A, but all of those notes are in E minor. There's no weird notes in the context of E minor. All right. So, if we were to play this full section, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, measure 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, measure 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then measure 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So, it's tricky. Just take your time with it. When you're ready for the tempo, then start playing with the recording. And, when I play with the recording, I just start to feel it after a while. The counting helps in the beginning, but over time, you just start to feel it personally. I've found it that way. But that being said, the counting absolutely helps in the beginning. So anyway, that's how the first 4 measures of the solo go. Nothing too crazy there as far as the theory is concerned. Nothing too crazy with this tapping. It's relatively simple tapping, but it's very fast. That's the only thing about this. It's just very fast. That's the hard part. Okay, so coming into the next section, we have this next lick we're going to talk about. At a slower tempo, I'll play it. And I do like this lick on the bridge pick, on the neck pickup, where I'm going to take this and I'm going to bring it all the way up. I'm going to take this and bring it all the way up for my neck pickup. I just think this lick sounds a little bit better on the neck pickup, personally. So, that being said, the lick sounds like this. Okay, so let's break that down. It starts off on an A note, the 10th fret of the B string, with a bend. Now, bending can make your solo sound terrible if you don't bend correctly. So one of the things that can quickly take you from sounding like an amateur to a professional or semi-professional is to just start bending your notes in tune. When you're playing solos with a lot of notes and fast runs and stuff, it's very easy to overlook the bending and not think too hard about it, but it kills how you sound if you bend incorrectly. So don't skip over the technique of bending and blow through it. Really slow down and think about what you're doing here. So when we play this note, this A, we have to bend it. But when you bend, you can bend to different pitches. Like if we only do this, that's not much of a bend. And if you could hear that, that sounded kind of weird in the context because we might have E minor in our ear. So if you're sensitive with your ear, you might recognize that sounded really terrible. Because right there, that's a B flat I'm bending into. And I can hear it by playing the next fret. So this A note needs to be bent into a B note, which makes perfect sense because we're in E minor. B flat's not in E minor. So when we bend this note, we have to bend it so it sounds like the 12th fret or a B. So when you're bending, you need to listen and use your ear. That's not quite right? So right there, we can hear it. So you need to practice and get your muscle memory when you practice this bend to get to the correct pitch. So take your time and check the 12th fret against your bend. So in other words, play the 10th fret and bend, then play the 12th fret right afterwards to see if you bent correctly. So make sure you do that. Don't speed through that. Take your time there. Now, as far as the technique of bending is concerned, especially on full bends, because it's not a half bend, we have to put a little more oomph and more strength, and we have to bend further than if it was a half step bend. So one trick that I like is I like to put my other fingers down with the finger that's going to do the bend. So in this case, I'm using my ring finger. And so what I'm doing is I have my middle finger and my index on the same string, so they get canceled out. They're not making in other words, I'm not getting those two notes to come out. They're just being canceled because my ring finger is on the same string. So when those two fingers are there, they're not going to come out. But what it does is it gives me more power and more strength with my hand when I do the bend. So we can certainly bend with just one finger. It's possible, and it's not super hard, but it's just even easier if you use those other two fingers, especially if you're due to bending. So anyway, that's one trick. And when we're bending here, if we were to bend down, we would run out of neck. So it's very, very possible that we couldn't even pull that off by going down. So we're going to bend this way because we have much more neck to bend on. Because, if we bend this way, it's very possible for that string to pop off the neck. Okay? So we're going to bend this way. So we play the note and bend up for a full bend. Now, the second bend, I don't come all the way down. I just kind of attack it a little bit, like as it came back down. You'll see, so what I mean is I'll do the bend. And if you notice, I didn't come all the way down. I just kind of came down a little bit and hit that bend again, if that makes sense. So I went. So just it's a little subtle. Just take your time there. Go nice and slow. So bend. But I didn't go. I didn't do that, if that makes sense. It was very slight. So the second time there, I didn't quite do like a normal full bend. I just kind of came down just a hair from where I bent and put it right back up there. So there's two A's going to B basically, but once again on that second one, I'm not really coming back down to the A, if that makes any sense. So we have basically, even though you hit the A, we're really targeting the B note. And music theory-wise, it makes perfect sense. A B is a chord tone in E minor, so total sense there, right? Okay. So after that, on the third note, we do play normal A, or the 10th fret. And then we play the 8th fret on the B string. So this measure, I'm going to bend with my ring finger two times. Let it come down, play a normal 10th fret or an A, and then come to the G, like that. So rhythmically speaking, the first bend is a quarter note. So it goes 1, and then the second bend is a dotted quarter note, 2 and 3, which is a little strange counting. And then the A note would come on the and of 3 and 4. So when you say and 4, you're just playing the 10th fret. And then the and of 4 is the G or the 8th fret. So if I were to count that nice and slow, it would go 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. I know that's a little weird. So 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. A little strange. So basically, the first bend lasts for 1 and, the second bend lasts for 2 and 3, and then the third note lasts for and 4, and then the last note lasts for the and of 4. So if you were to count the subdivision of eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, that might help. So if you go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. All right. So after the A, we hit a G. So the notes in this first measure have basically been an A bending up to B pretty much 2 times. and then it comes to an A, and then to a G. There is nothing weird there. Those are all notes in the key of E minor. Makes total sense, music theory-wise. Then we're going to land on a F sharp in the next measure, the 7th fret, and there's going to be vibrato with the left hand, just normal vibrato. Then it's going to be F sharp and G, like that, or 7 and 8. Then we're going to have 7, 8, 7, and we're going to hammer onto the 8 and pull off to the 7. So in other words, we're going to pick 7, hammer on 8 with the middle finger, pull off to 7, like that. Just practice that if you need to. And then we're going to land on an E, the 9th fret of the G string. So this measure so far is going to be 7th fret with vibrato, 7th fret again, 8th fret, then 7, hammer on to 8, pull off to 7, 9th fret on the G, like that. And the notes, nothing weird here. We have F sharp, G, F sharp, G, F sharp, E. All notes with an E minor. Nothing too strange. He might be thinking about that F sharp 5 possibly, but like I said, that F sharp 5 passes through very quickly. So, but regardless, all these notes are in the context of E minor, so it would work in general over the rhythm riff. Now, rhythmically, on this measure, it starts off with a half note, so it would go 1, 2. Then the next two notes are eighth notes, just simply 3 and then when we have the 7, 8, 7, that's a 16th note triplet, so it would be triplet, but quite fast because it's the 16th note triplet. And then it lands on an 8th note for beat 4, or rather the and of 4. So it's a little tricky to count this, but it would be 1, 2, 3, and triplet and of 4. I know it's a little weird. The triplet, or the 16th note triplet, lands on beat 4, so it's taking up the space of the 8th note of beat 4, if that makes any sense. So if I were to count this in 8th notes, it would go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and like that. A little strange. But that's the rhythm there. Okay. Now, on to the next measure. So this measure is going to have 7th fret on the G string, 9th fret on the D string, 7th fret on the G, 7th fret on the G, another 7th fret on the G with a slide at the end. And the notes there are D, B, D, 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 E, and vibrato at the end. Nothing weird there music theory-wise. All those notes are in the key. And rhythmically, it goes 1 and 2 and 3, 4, like that. The slide is like a grace note, so it kind of comes in before the beat. It's not little strange, the grace notes. So anyway, the slide is into the E is all considered the half notes. So one more time, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, like that. It's kind of hard to count that 3, 4 at the end, but that section there is going to last for 3 and 4. And then in the next measure, it is going to still be holding out the E on the G string and the 9th fret. So you're still holding that out from the previous measure for another 2 beats. So, and then there will be a slide after that. And I like to slide at the 12th fret, and you just slide down like that. Pretty simple. And that lasts also pretty much for 2 beats, though. You don't necessarily have to keep sliding for 2 beats, but you'll see what I mean. So let's put these 2 measures together rhythmically. I think that'll be easier. So we have 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Okay? And as mentioned, nothing crazy here. And this lick has just a normal E minor flavor, not even really pentatonic, especially because of the F sharp. So you're aware there. You could think of it as coming from this shape of the pentatonic scale. Which would be the 4th shape. But because of the F sharp, I'm leaning more towards it being just normal E minor. So like, I kind of see it as coming from there. So however you want to think about that, you could think of it as coming from E minor or the pentatonic scale with the added F sharp if you want. But I think it's just simpler to think of this as E minor in this particular case. So that's the scale kind of being thought about here. All right, moving on. I like this part a lot. I think it sounds awesome. It's actually just a bunch of octave chords. And octave chords are similar to power chords shape-wise, but they're not quite the same. So the first chord here looks like this. And I like to play these with my pinky. You could do the ring, but personally I prefer the pinky. So if you think of it like an E5 chord, which would typically look like this, in this particular position of the guitar, it is basically very similar to this, but we're going to get rid of the ring finger, and we are going to angle our first finger so that this string doesn't make any sound, and that's what that tab there is. That's a dead note on the tab there, with the X there. That's what that is. Also, I'm going to switch back to my bridge pickup. I like this part on my bridge pickup. I think it sounds a little better. So, we start with this chord, and an octave chord, music theory-wise, is just, in this case, an E and an E. So we have this low E here and a higher E at the octave. So it's pretty simple theory-wise. So what happens is we play this and we slide over to F sharp. So it's going to go E to F sharp. Just 2 frets over like that. That's all that's happening. So we're going from 7 to 9. Then we're going to pick the 9th fret or the F sharp chord twice. Like that. Then we're going to pick this chord again and slide over to 10. So we're going to go from F sharp to G, like that. Then we're going to pick the 10th fret or the G chord, G octave chord, twice. And that's what happens in this particular measure. And we just had E, F sharp, G, basically. Once again, nothing weird here. These are all notes from the normal E minor key. Now, rhythmically, we go 1 and, so 8th notes with the slide, then 2 and, just picking that, then we go 3 and with the slide, and then 4 and picking. So nice and slow, just normal 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, like that. Okay, now going into the next measure, starts off on the G octave chord, and then we're going to slide over to the A, or the 12th fret octave chord, like this. Like that. Then we're going to pick the 12th twice again. Then we're going to do 12 sliding back to 10. So the A back to the G. And then we're going to slide the 10 back to the 12, or the G to the A. Like that. So rhythmically speaking, it's going to go 1 and, that was a slide. 2 and, I picked that. 3 and, that was a slide. And then 4 and that was a slide. Once again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, like that. Moving on to, so the notes here, nothing weird. All the notes were coming from E minor. So we just had G and A and G pretty much. Now into the next measure, we are going to do the A octave chord going into a B octave chord, or 12 to 14. Like that. And then 14 back to 12. And then 12 back to 14. And then B to C, or 14 to 15. Like that. Nothing weird music theory-wise, just A, B, and C. All those notes are in E minor. So we have, rhythmically, we're going to go 1 and, that was a slide, 2 and, another slide, 3 and, another slide, 4 and, another slide. All slides in this measure. So 1 and, 2 and, 3 and, 4 and. All right. And then we are going to come to the last measure of octave chords. It is going to start on the C, or the 15th, going into the D, the 17th, with a slide. And then it's going to do 17th sliding into 19, or D to E. And then you're going to pick this 19th, or the E again. So C, D, E, nothing weird there music theory-wise, all notes in E minor. So once again. Okay. And then after that, you simply have 17 and 19 on the D string. And I like to do a shift here because of where we're going to go in a second. So I'm just shifting my first finger over, 17 and 19, like that. Okay, so rhythmically, it's going to go 1 and 2 and 3. Now this is a quarter note here, and then 4 and, like that. And I forgot to mention there's vibrato on the last octave chord, so it goes 1 and 2 and 3 with vibrato, and then you just play those two notes at the end. So once again, rhythmically, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. Okay, feel free to take your time and slow down and count it all out, but as you hear it and you speed it up, you'll start to feel this. You don't have to really count once you can hear it and feel it. At least that's how it worked out for me. So as I mentioned, counting helps in the beginning, but after you've counted it and you understand it, you can start to feel it and just hear it. So start to kind of put it together. You know, it's a pretty distinctive sound there. You can really hear that if you listen to the song a bunch. But take your time with that. Be mindful of muting that D string, and be careful with the slides. Be accurate. It's very easy to slide to the wrong fret if you're not careful, etc. All right, moving on to basically the last lick of this section that we're going to do in this video. It's going to start off with a grace note on the 19th fret. So if you recall, I had a shift like this from the previous riff, right? So now that we're in position, we're going to play this 19th fret to the 21st fret, but it's basically a grace note. Like that. Kind of a hammer-on, pretty much. And we're going to do vibrato on this 21st fret. And music theory-wise from the previous measure, basically we went G, A, right there, and then this is A to B. So it's really G, A to B. And that just comes right from E minor. Nothing weird there. And we're really emphasizing this B right now with the vibrato, 21st fret. Then we're going to play the 21st fret again. And then we're going to play the 19th fret on the G string. This is a D note. And then we're going to play the 21st fret, which is an E. And we're going to bend it up to an F sharp. And we actually you could bend this string either direction. So whichever one's more comfortable to you. So in other words, you can bend towards the ground, or you can bend towards you. And you'll notice I'm playing that right there to make sure I'm bending correctly. That's just 2 frets over because it's a full step bend. Basically, we're bending this E into an F sharp. And I'm doing that same thing where I'm using the other 2 fingers for extra strength. So take your time. Really do not go too fast here. Really make sure you can bend this note correctly and accurately. Otherwise, it'll sound really terrible. So just to kind of show you, like, let's say I bent it wrong, and just hear how weird it would sound. See what I mean? See how terrible that sounds as opposed to... So much better when you bend it in tune. Okay, now after you bend, the bend is actually going to come back down. So we're going to hear it bend up, and we're going to hear it actually come back down. So it's really fun when you bend and you let it come back down. It sounds awesome. So you have the bend, come back down like that, or if you bent the other way, however you want to do that. And then we're going to play the 19th fret here, which is another D. So music theory-wise, none of the notes are out of place at all. And rhythmically what's happening is basically, so we have this grace note, 21st fret on the D string, going to last for 2 beats. 1, 2, and then 3 and right there. And then the bend will last for a dotted 8th note. So 4 E and, so the bend up and bend down will last for 4 E and. So 4 E and then a little 16th note at the end on the 19th fret. So a little slower. 1, 2, 3 and 4 E and 1, 2, 3 and 4 E and like that, rhythmically speaking. Then we come into the next measure. And here we have the 21st fret on the G string coming to the 19th fret on the G. And those are E and D respectively. And then we're going to hit this 21st fret on the D string, which is a B. And we're going to come back to this 19th fret, which is a D, with some vibrato. Then back to the 21st fret again for the B. And back to the 19th fret again on the G for another D note. And we're going to hammer on to 21, which is E. Like that. So, like that. That wasn't quite in rhythm, but those are the notes. So, rhythmically speaking, we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, E and So let's do that super slow. The rhythm here is a little strange. 1 and 2 and 3. So that quarter note is on and 3. So it's a little bit off the beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and So at the end, the hammer and pull off, the 19 lasts for an eighth note, for a dotted eighth note, and then the 21 is a 16th note. So one more time: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and like that. Okay. Then we are coming in to the next measure. We're going to bend another full bend on 21 of the G string. So an E bending into an F sharp. Okay. And then we're going to do 19 on the B string, which is also F sharp. And then we are going to do 19 on the high E, which is a B note. So those first two notes should end up sounding the same. Because I have to grab that note right away, I'm actually going to opt to bend this way. And this is cool because you're going to get direct feedback if you bent correctly in this particular case. Because the next note is the same note as the bent note. And then we're going to, we grab that note, the 19th fret on the high E like we talked about. Then we're going to have a bend on 22, which is an A note bending into a B. And we definitely want to bend towards our face because we would run out of, guitar otherwise. Then it's 22 to 19, and which is A going to F sharp. And then there's a 22 on the high E string, which is a D bending into an E note. You have to have 24 frets to be able to check that one. So anyway, rhythmically speaking, the first two notes are eighth notes. So 1 and like that. So the bend's a little quick there. And then the next 19 is an eighth note. And then this bend is a quarter note. And then you hit 16th notes with the pull off. And then the last bend there appears to be just a quarter note. So really slow rhythmically. It's a little confusing to count, but we'll try. So we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Very tricky to count that. There was nothing crazy there note-wise. As we mentioned, all those notes came from E minor. And then we are going to finish this part of the solo here in this next measure with a bunch of pull-offs. It's basically 22 on the high E string, pulling off to 19, and it's done 3 times with 16th notes, and that is D going to B. Then we're going to grab 22 on the B string, which is an A note. Then we're going to go back to 19 on the E, which was B. Then we're going to come to 22 on the B string with another full bend. And then it just slides down like that. And you'll notice there's a 14th fret at the end, which is kind of setting us up for the next part. I actually didn't play that 14th fret when I covered this. I just kind of let it go. And I basically, personally, I'm just going to skip that note when I play it. I just it was a bit tricky for me to be able to grab that. I personally, when I hear this, I just hear the bend and then going right into the next measure, right on the 17th fret when we get into that video. But if you want to play that 14th fret to set yourself up, go for it. Nothing wrong there. So, rhythmically on this last measure, if you were to count it, it's basically 1 E and 2 E and 3. So the last note there with the bend is lasting 3 to 4. If you want to hit the and of 4 with the 14, you'd be more than welcome to. So if you were to do that, it would go 3 and 4 and, or 3 and 4. So while you're saying and 4, you'd have to slide. So 3 and 4 and like that. So like I said, I personally skip that 14th fret or the and of 4 there. What's interesting on this last section is this scale seems to be emphasizing B minor pentatonic more than E minor pentatonic, in my personal opinion, as I'm looking at it. So a normal B minor pentatonic up here would start on the 19th fret, and it would go 19, 22, 19, 21, 19, 21, 19, 21, 19, 22, 19, 22. I sat here and I thought for a second, it could also be coming from one of the positions of E minor pentatonic, in which case it would do this. Right there, a little different, right? Instead of that note. And we would hit this one. But we could theoretically, but it really is, really emphasizing the B, especially with the bends and where it bends. And we also get this note here in that section, right? So we get that F sharp. So it's interesting. Kirk Hammett is basically using B minor pentatonic. Now, what's interesting is because of the notes in B minor pentatonic and what it omits, all of the notes are contained in the normal E minor key. This is what's interesting about pentatonic sometimes, because you just have B, D, E, F sharp, and A, and then it starts over again. But there's nothing there that wouldn't be in the key of E minor. So it's interesting. So Kirk Hammett's basically using the B minor pentatonic shape here, and it works. So that's pretty neat. And the notes that are getting emphasized with the vibrato and everything are interesting to look at. So if you recall, you start off with vibrato in B, which is a chord tone in E minor, makes perfect sense. And then we bend up right into that F sharp, which, again, kind of gives us credence to the B minor pentatonic, because F sharp is not an E minor pentatonic. That's one of the notes that gets skipped. So when you do that bend, you're bending into an F sharp. And then we're doing vibrato on the D right there. That's a chord tone or a note in E minor, nothing too crazy. And then we have that bend again, that E bending into the F sharp again. And this part right here, that's such a common blues lick that gets played all the time by all really great blues players. So this lick here, with the bending, that is basically a straight up blues pentatonic lick coming from B minor. And the lick ended bending into B. So as you can see, it's really, really emphasizing, B minor pentatonic there. So really there are basically 3 main parts to this first part of the guitar solo, 3 main licks to practice. So practice each lick individually. Take your time. This was quite a bit of material here. Nothing wrong if this takes you a couple months to do this, especially if you never, especially if this is like your first time doing lead guitar. This solo isn't the craziest solo, but it's also not the easiest solo either. So once again, take your time. I hope you've enjoyed this. Have fun. Take your time with it. Once again, my name is Adam with the Adam Wines Guitar Academy, and I am available for private Zoom lessons. If you're interested, contact me directly, and my contact details are in the description.